All right. Hey, Brooke. This is Rachel Sklar, Brooke Shapiro, and we're so excited to have this conversation today. We don't have anybody in the room. We're just recording this as a contribution to those of you who have a child who maybe struggles in school, struggles with family, struggles in the great big world, and you want to kind of have an instruction manual for how to support them. Just for a little bit of background, I'm a parenting coach. I specialize in helping moms of strong-willed kids. And Brooke, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Brooke Shapiro. I have two strong-willed kids, and I also have a community called Sprinkles Parents, where we provide activities, education, and resources to families.
Awesome. And so many years ago, like how was it? Maybe 3 years ago, I
Hmm.
helped Brooke develop sort of a cheat sheet that she could give to teachers on how to help her son in the classroom. Because one of the things that I do with my clients is I really focus on what are the conditions under which they thrive. And I think that customizing an approach for our kids, especially our neurodivergent kids, it's really important that we focus on what have we figured out works at home and how can we support like translating that information to the other caregivers in their lives. So whether it's a camp counselor, a teacher, or even, Brooke actually gave this resource to her family members when she was going on a holiday vacation with them. She gave them a letter and a heads up, like, hey, when we get there, like, here are the things my son struggles with. Here are the things that help. Here's how you can be with him. And it was really helpful. And Brooke, I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but the place that I got this idea was when my son, who's now 15, was in the threes classroom at the JCC in Palo Alto. There was a little girl in his class who was on the spectrum, and her mom was amazing, was friendly with her. And I was in the classroom one day and I saw a piece of paper on the refrigerator in the classroom. Preschool classroom had a refrigerator in it, and it was like her one pager on how to be with this child. What were the tips for the teachers to help this child? And I thought that is a great idea, you know?
Yeah.
And so I know that yours is not a one pager, but I think that if for a teacher to like sort of access it and have quick reminders of what works, it's nice to have it as a one pager. And so Brooke, so you reached out to me and said, like, this is a resource that people love. I tell people about this all the time, and I really want to teach other people how to do it. And so here we are.
Yeah. Actually, thank you, Rachel. And actually, I was gonna even take a step backwards, is like when I first had my son, I remember they like handed him to me in the hospital, and you snuggle your baby, and then I looked at the nurse and I was like, what do I do? Like, where's the user manual for him? Like, should I kiss him? Should I I literally was like happy to have the people. Like, I didn't know what to do. I was just like asking questions. I didn't. So I was joked, like I left the hospital and I was kept being like, where's my user manual for this kid? Where's my user manual? And then when I was hitting, I found out Jace's diagnosis and I was just hitting rock bottom, not knowing what to do, how to help Jace because I couldn't, I was struggling to figure out the patterns. Some teachers were struggling to figure out the patterns. Some of his teachers or my husband started to figure out what was working. So we had talked about like, how do we put down what's working in one place so that everyone can start building upon it? So I had his teacher's input in there. I had my husband's input was working. So like even I could look at it and go, oh, okay, that's what works. And you and I would talk about work. So before we jump in, I just also wanted to mention that because once I made it for Jace, I kept sharing it with all my friends to make for their kids. And it turned into a resume, was like a joke or a manual that we all would give the teachers. And then the teachers would be so excited to meet our kids or the camp counselors knowing this kid beforehand. It was like this camp counselor always said it's their cheat code to Jace. Like they were ready to be with Jace. They were excited to meet Jace. It was the first kid they reached out to in the camp. So I just wanted to mention that part too.
No, I love
Um,
that because what it does is it creates an emotional connection for the caregiver before they even meet the child. And I think
mhm.
kids tune into that, I think that they feel that. And we're going to talk
Mm,
about their connection language in a minute, but yeah, I think that this is a great example. In the Boy Mom method that I teach, we've got three pillars. The first one is about connection and relationships and how to prioritize those. The second is about collaborative problem solving. And the third, which you're nailing, is setting your child up for success.
Mm.
What a great
Yes.
example of how you can do something that's in the environment that's not about fixing the child, but it's about fixing the system that they're in.
Hmm.
You
That's a
are
really good
nailing
point.
it. Yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Um,
And I remember when we had the conversation when I said, "Hey, I think you got to get this in writing for the teachers. Like, let's make a manual, like write this down."
yeah.
And you sent me your draft. And I remember going in a Google Doc, and I remember fixing up your draft and asking a few reflection questions and having you refine it. And it really, I just want to say that it's a living document
Hmm.
that you refine over time. And it's not specific to preschoolers or kindergartners. It doesn't have to be only for younger kids. Older kids benefit as well. In fact, I had just had a client this week who has a middle schooler, and she's like, my kid's getting in trouble at school, and the teacher's calling me. He's being disruptive. What do I do? And I'm asking, well, what works? What do you know works? And instead of saying to yourself, how do I punish him at home for the bad behavior at school? What if you said to yourself, what do I need to tell the teacher works with my kid?
Yeah, and the teachers love it actually. Like my teacher, she thanks me for it. The special ed teacher thanks me for it. Like I know for camp, at least in California here, kids go to camp a few weeks here, then a few weeks, so they're constantly changing. So to give this to camp counselors when the kids go to sleepaway or anything like that as they're older, any kind of transition, I feel like it really just helps as that cheat code,
Absolutely.
that user manual. And I always joke that like I made one for my in-laws to like for like my husband or for my parents. So he knows like, here's my parents' cheat code. Here's my
Yeah,
parents. So it really
yeah.
works for anyone
And
to just have a user manual.
I want to say that one of the most important things that you can do is make it strengths based.
Yeah.
And so with this mama that I was just telling you about, she's like, well, I don't know what to tell the teacher. And I said, well, you want to leverage his strengths. And what does that mean? Right?
Hmm.
That means is that we want this document to inspire ideas that are based not on what the child's challenges are, but
Hmm.
on what their strengths are. So, for example, if you know your child is a social butterfly and is being disruptive because they're talking with friends, but you also know that they're a leader among their friends and they thrive when they have purpose and they are a leader in the classroom, well, instead of sending a note home or having a punishment for the student, what if the teacher was able to say, hey, you're such a great leader. Can I have you take on this little role in the classroom as a redirection that really leverages strength and connection?
Yeah.
But every kid's manual is going to be different, right? They're going to be strength-based, but they're all going to have different things that work for them. So
Yeah, definitely. Could I share mine with everyone?
that would be
Um,
amazing. I think everyone's
okay.
dying to see one here.
All right. So, I am going to share for what I did for my son. I started off like just really high level of like why I love him and like why anyone who meets him is going to be loving him, right? He's just like he really does light up a room and I'm gonna cry. But like his I always put like his birthday, something fun like a horoscope. My son's teacher loved that. She knew his horoscope because she was the same one. The first thing she said to him to build that connection was, "Hey, we're birthday buddies."
So what you're
So
doing there is you're creating this relationship, a relatedness that she can lean into. I love that.
yeah. And so, like I said, and then she knew like firsthand, what to expect from him. If she didn't have not she didn't have a high expectation, but she didn't expect Jace to be this way. She knew coming in to where to meet Jace where he was because she knew he had autism. She knew he was twice exceptional. Talked about his pathological demand avoidance, how he doesn't like really being told what to do. I also talk about, his genetic disease, but then I really wanted to make sure she knew his strengths first, so that way, if she can again engage him. So we talked about like he's really good at math, he's really good at creative, he's really good dance moves, like some silly things, just to really help him thrive. Also talk about what his interests are because frankly, a lot of times in school, because he's twice exceptional, he's not interested in the same things kids his age are. So like things like he likes numbers, letters, he loves to bolt, like just these things that intrigue him to talk about. And like animals and fish and things like that are not going to be his thing. Like when the minute he sees those on a board, he's lost it. And so I think it's just helpful for her to know how she can spark his interest by knowing his interests, how to get him to follow the rules.
Let me
And,
say, I'm going to keep interjecting little things here. So
good.
one thing about interests, and this is more about gender, but it's probably true of all kids, but especially with boys, they connect over shared interests. That's one of the things that we really focus in on our program. So like we may not be able to connect with them through talk as easily as we can connect with them over talking about things that they love or things that they love to do. Like I can have a long conversation with my son about the Rubik's Cube algorithm. If I'm trying to like connect with him by talking about feelings or his day at school, it's probably going to fall flat. And so this is a great way to give teachers an opportunity for like, here's how to build rapport with my child, right?
Yeah, or one thing actually that I ended up doing for Jace is like, we thought about which Pokemon has which feelings, to talk about emotions and things like that. Because this one's a fire Pokemon, this one's a water, so it's more mellow Pokemon. Anyways, but that's
Yeah.
how I could connect things that I'm trying to teach him.
Huh.
And the same with teachers too.
And so I
Um,
see your next thing is connection language. And I actually
yes.
want to make a distinction between a connection language and a love language.
Okay.
So the love language, the love languages, which many people know what they are, and I saw that you had a link to an article about the five love languages.
Hmm.
But for our kids, let's think in terms of like, what is their connection language? What's that thing that makes them pay attention to you? Right? Or what's that thing that when they say you pay attention to them?
Mm.
Right? It's that want and give in the world of connection language. And so for example, I might say, um, like I'll go back to this example of like the kid who's just a really social animal. Like his connection language might be through his like socializing with friends. Whereas
Hmm.
another child, that might not be that friend, that importance of that friend group might not be. You might have a kid who's more like actually wants his alone time at recess, right?
Mm.
So his connection language is going to be something different. So getting to know your child at that level, not only is it a gift to him, but it's a gift to the people around him if you can sort of tease that out and put words to it.
That's a really good point. I did it just based on love language because that for me was my aha. But I think to your point, there is a distinction of connection language and love language too. Um, yeah. And then again, to make it personal, I just keep adding pictures of our family. I talk about each person of our family, um, saying who's in our family so that the teachers get a dynamic because back to connection with them, they'll know, if they're what their sister might be like at home or maybe their sister's at school. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then their mom, like about, I did it for myself. You can do it for a partner. And, about where we live, just kind of a little bit about ourselves. Just again, so they have a background. So, if you're divorced parents, the teachers know that coming in, and I think it's helpful. If you are I don't know, a single parent, saying, just reminding teachers, it's just really you, to be talking to, and you're doing this on your own. I think it's just really helpful for teachers to have that background, to just know who you are. This part I actually worked really closely on with Rachel. I worked on really closely with my son's previous teachers. I got their input. I got input from, any therapist my son worked with, any I don't know, I just got like all the input and babysitters that really were able to understand him, I just got all of the things that would like work with Jason in a classroom, like if he's upset, if it's sensory, anything that the micro connections like Rachel just mentioned, what are the things that are working? And so the teachers actually, and like I said, therapists really helped me build this part out of what works in the classroom. And then, like I said, I give this every time to a new teacher. So at the end of this year, I would just ask my son's teacher, hey, remember the manual you loved? Can you, add to it, edit it? Maybe things don't work anymore, right? Like, I don't know if my son likes engineering and building blocks as much anymore because he's getting older. So just asking them to kind of put the things that they experience working for them. They want to help next year's teachers as well, right? It's win-win for all. So been really lucky where the teachers are just super, as you can see, very thorough and want to keep adding to it as much as they can.
But everything's so short. I mean, I'm just looking at this list going, motivate him with math, I mean, what a genius, very short, but says so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I know that with my kids. That's true of my oldest son, if he's ignoring me or whatever, if I give him a math problem, immediately his brain is engaged and he's back on earth,
Yeah.
And
It's
so yeah, and I see you say offer micro connections, saying I love you, you're awesome in a silly voice. I'm looking about 3/4 of the way down on your screen
yeah.
share. And I'll just say that micro connections are, I call these like push downers and lift uppers. There's so many times in the day where we're like, oh my God, your shoes are not on. What is wrong with you? Or you're 6 years old already. You should be able to do this. Or God, I already told you, like, brush your teeth. And so, obviously we want to counteract those as much as possible, but micro connections are this idea that it only takes, and this is research shows, like just a high five in the hallway and an I
hmm
see you can be more meaningful to a child than a half an hour of therapy.
hmm
Right. And so those little moments where you're like flashing the I love you sign, or you're like just saying I see you, or just doing little things that make them feel like they matter will show up later in positive behavior.
Yes, exactly. Actually, one of the so my daughter is one of those kids that we're like, you hug them before leaving, they don't want you to leave, for drop-offs. And so we made a micro connections of like a silly handshake. At the end of the handshake, she gets to like push me out the door. And
Mhm.
that has been so game changer just to make drop-offs easier. And the teachers leave in the middle of the day with their shifts and stuff. And so she would get sad with teachers leaving. So again, I have a manual for my daughter too, and said, have this is what you do for a little hand thing, and then she'll kick you out the door and she'll be so much better. And it makes her feel so special because it's just her one secret thing with whoever she's with. Um, so that's just another way that I've used it. Um, so yeah, just different ideas. The next part of this is I talk about like feelings. So like just having the teachers understand how he feels. Like he literally feels out of control. Like as much as like when you're like calm down, tantrum, like from his mindset, he just like he can't control it. He's like it becomes out of his body. And so I wanted them to understand that like this is what he's feeling, and so what he's in those moments he's like wanting knowledge, he likes to have things in his power, like he wants to experience the world, and just like he loves that attention and loves he's just like looking for that sensory that he's not experiencing in the moment. If it gets to be too loud, if it gets to be too many people, like here's just like the feelings he has. Um and I, I don't know, Rachel, if this was something you added or if I added it, but I was watching the TV show Carl the Connector. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
My
Um,
kids are, I don't know
it's
that one.
about it's a PBS show with kids with autism, like his experience and his perspective with having friends at a school.
Okay.
And so it's really cool. It's like in it, they show how he's feeling all the time, like of like being suffocated and like what these feelings are. And then when he doesn't tell his friends, and then when he finally tells his friends, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that's how you felt inside."
Uh,
Um, so I just added this to make people understand like how he could be feeling during special moments. So to like have that empathy, that because other people don't understand what it's like to be in your kid's shoes, right? Like,
Absolutely. And I think what you're really pointing to here is sort of my mantra about compassion and patience, which is
mhm,
compassion and patience rise and fall together. So, what you're
mm,
doing in this section is you're helping their caregivers and yourself feel compassion for his experience. And when we feel compassion for someone's experience, we have more patience with them because we get it.
mhm,
And so and I just want to mention that piece about cognitive and emotional empathy, where the emotional empathy is where you're actually saying, oh, it seems like you seem really, frustrated right now, or you seem angry, or you seem sad, or whatever, right? And some kids, that's great, right? They feel so validated by it. Other kids may feel like, no kidding, I'm mad. And so what can really help is to say instead what might be going through their mind, right? Like what are they thinking right now? Like, oh, I think that that it's not fair that that kid got the toy before you did when you're the one who brought it into the classroom today, or something like that, right?
Mm.
Just really focusing on,
I'm gonna
um,
add this.
yeah, great. What their thought process might be behind what the feelings are, because it's good to acknowledge feelings. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I want them to have wide emotional vocabulary. But really what they're looking for is they're looking for someone who gets them, who like gets their point of view, you know.
Hmm. And the
And not
validation that
again,
it's
not
real.
all kids, but I think in my experience with you and Jace, this is true, and it is true with a lot of kids, that you're validating that like it makes sense that they would feel that way right now. Like it
Hmm.
makes sense that you would want to, you know, I don't know, what's an example of a sensory seeking behavior he does in the classroom that's maybe not super helpful or appropriate that a teacher
He'll
would.
just start kicking a kid sometimes.
Yeah, right. So it makes sense that your body is wanting to kick right now. We haven't
Hmm.
been outside in a long time and your body wants to move,
Hmm.
right? Gosh, doesn't
Yeah.
it feel like it's been too long since we went outside? He's gonna be like, yes.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so by sort of helping the kid know that you get where they're coming from, it can be really helpful. And teachers can, caregivers, camp counselors, grandparents. I mean, if everyone was talking to them in that way, they would be less defensive overall.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think back to your micro connections too, like what were his connection points? What was with micro connections when he's spiraling, here were the micro connections you can always try with him. The one thing I do want to point out on here, Rachel, that I've seen or you've mentioned before is like the movement, cross body movements or swinging. We just got a shake plate, like a vibration plate. I don't know if you've seen those where you can stand and just it shakes you for a few minutes.
Oh,
And those have been just really helpful when I see he's like starting to get upset, just to like calm down his body as it distracts him and it's like kind of moving. And the classroom got one. So I think it's just like, again, also whenever you can give the classroom any of these tools, if they don't have it already to set your kid up for success or ask them to purchase it, that's really helped too. If
yeah.
they don't have a swing, they don't have those seats that can move around. Just suggesting those things or just buying them for the school.
I know that we have one mom in our program whose son did really well if there was the band around the legs of the chair so that he could put his
Mm.
feet and get that sensory feedback on the legs of the chair. Are you familiar with this?
Oh, I had it growing up actually.
You had it growing up. Okay. And so what she bought them for all the class, for all the chairs in the classroom.
Yeah.
There was a real like, there was an intention behind that that's like everyone would benefit from this, not just my kid who's going to stand out if he needs to have a special chair, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. And my funny enough, for Jace, he loves bowling. I bought bowling sets for after school and for regular school. And like now all the kids love bowling. Like I can't tell you how many bowling birthday parties there have been now in the class,
That's so cute.
which is
And
great
and
for Jace
and
because he
what you
doesn't want
were
to go to the jumping places, with birthday parties usual, and he doesn't want, he's not going to want to do those things. So now all the kids in class love bowling. But
okay.
your kid is so special and they spark the whole room, right? And so why not if we all, I mean, we could all do this for our kids and it doesn't hurt anyone. It doesn't hurt the school. Like we're helping all the kids, um,
I want to
by
speak to
bringing the best of our
thing.
kids.
One other thing I want to speak is like, not all parents feel like their child sparks the room. Serious. And you didn't used to either.
Okay, true.
Okay. You didn't. And your frustration around some of his behaviors were you felt pretty hopeless at times.
Yeah.
And so I just want to name that where you are right now is where a lot of moms are not yet, but it should give people hope, that if you do this, then you will see your child with all of these strengths and they will see themselves that way and the caregivers will, and then they will spark the room up. So I just really want to name that. And I also just want to name what you were mentioning before about bilateral stimulation.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's the word.
yes, so that's no, that's great. And some kids really benefit from it. Not all will be responsive, but the idea is that, whatever we can do to have the right side of the body cross over the left side and the left side cross over the right over to the right side, what that does is it just helps organize and balance the brain because the right side of the brain is controlling the left side of the body. And so brain breaks are when a child might just need to like stop doing whatever it is we're demanding of them at the moment and do something else to help their brain get organized. And if that thing, that activity can be a cross body movement, it can help regulate them more quickly.
Yes, thank you. It's so there's actually lots of YouTube videos now, Rachel. My Jace came home yesterday or when it was raining and was like, "Can I watch a Pokemon brain break?" And I had this like screen time, but is it? But anyways, but there are lots of like brain break activities for kids because at first you said brain breaks and I was like, "Okay, I don't understand." And then just for people to know where they could find videos or like you can find these on YouTube and you have a list of activities too.
Yeah. I
Um,
share a list of things like, like patty cake is across as a bilateral stimulation activity, like there's so
yeah.
many things that kids can be doing that are just fun, and ways, micro connective ways, right?
Yeah,
To
which
to
is the
bring
end of
them
the
back to
game.
it. Yeah.
And the other thing I was just gonna say for those who don't feel that way about their kids, just really quick, I didn't feel that way about myself,
Mm,
right? And so I think while trying to learn about Jace, I had to learn a lot about myself, if that makes sense.
sure.
Because so many things that I was frustrated with Jace about were things that like I was saying, I had the bands at school. I, have to do cross bodies to calm myself down. I had a hard time regulating my emotions. So how did I expect Jace to be able to regulate his emotions? Um, so a lot of this I had to figure out for myself first sometimes, Rachel, and that helped me also figure out for Jace too.
I love
Um,
that.
so just moving on in the essence of time, yeah, I was one of the things that I wanted to also bring in was just like things outside of school that, or camp or wherever that he loves. Again, back to those micro connections. Like, he likes the ocean, he likes Pokemon cards, he likes swimming, like all these things that interest him just because, like, again, that's where I'm seeing him having success, right? He's having success in chess. He had success, he's naturally good at piano, even though I don't do piano lessons. Um, so just again, back to these micro connections, so they really know him. This part, Rachel, I think I added this. I don't know if you, because this is not necessarily a positive thing, which I know we wanted to focus on, but I have like watch outs, things to avoid. Because I'll be honest, like sometimes it can be really sometimes being around family can be very triggering for us as adults, right? Sometimes being in new situations, if you're an introvert, can be very triggering. The world now, can be very triggering. So, anyways, I tried to put things that like let's try and stay away from unless you want to poke the bear. Um, and if you do these things, just be, revert back to what, strategies are. So like knowing like addictive personality is one of the things. Like any screens are going to spiral on. And don't get me wrong, in school, there are screens, right? Like I think half the day at public school at this point we're on screens, which is a whole other story. But like when you pull him off, he's going to be dysregulated. So you need to be prepared knowing this is going to happen, right? So again, giving it back to teachers, they were like, okay, like I need to make sure like I have a tool in place for Jace. Like, so day one, they had, whatever they thought was appropriate for him. And if I didn't warn them of that, again, they wouldn't have been prepared, right? So this are
Mhm.
just things where like they would know ahead of time, like that, like my son doesn't like long walks, like he's not interested. So like doing a hike in class is like, don't you tell him to say it. Like, I
Yeah.
know it's not going to work.
I got to name an elephant in the room right now. I keep thinking of it, and then I don't know where the right time to interject this is, but just the idea that teachers have a classroom of 30 kids or 20 kids, depending on, the school. And it's really hard for teachers to give this kind of customized support to a child. And also, like, where's the IEP in this conversation? Where's the 504 plan in this conversation? And how does that connect with this manual, right? And so I just want to name that everyone's in a different part of that process, whether they're moving towards IEP, whether they're not going to qualify for an IEP, but this would still be helpful. Like everyone will be in a different place with respect to that. And while it's true that teachers may not be able to provide some of these accommodations without an IEP, or even with an IEP, they may be really hard to apply. I still think that it's worth the exercise, because that way, when they message you and they're like, hey, your kid is being disruptive because they can't handle the long walk that our class went on today, then you get to say, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like we know like that that's something to watch out for and something to avoid. And so let's talk together about how we can create an accommodation that would work. You don't need an IEP for that conversation.
Right. Yeah. I think I first made this even, Rachel, before I had Jace's IEP finalized. And originally, again, it's been iterative. So I added, we'll get to that. I added Jace's IEP actually to this document and any other goals that therapists are all working on, just to make it more like everybody's on the same page, right? Because, at home you might be working on this, and at school they're working on that, and like in therapy they could be working here, and like in sports maybe they're working on him doing XYZ, right? So if everybody knows what everyone's working on too, it kind of makes
Yes.
we're all on the same page, which is
And,
what I love about this.
and how do you and your how does you and your neurodiversity work with this? Does it help you? And was it hard to create given some of the ways your brain works?
um, let's see. I was not good. I'll be honest, I'm not good at spotting trends. But that's my, social cues, spotting trends. Like I'll make them the same mistake over and over again and over and over. And my husband will be like, you literally did this yesterday. Didn't you learn, to put the keys here so you know where they are every single morning? Why do you? So, anyways, I never learn from mistakes of my brain. Like, I don't know. I forget. But that said, sitting down and doing this with someone else, body doubling this with me. Like I didn't want to do this. I think I procrastinated on you doing this. You told me to do this for a few weeks, and I kept being like, oh, the sky is green today. Like I'm a great procrastinator. So having finally someone sit down with me and do it, I think was the one thing that was helpful to doing this with someone else who I've talked to and can like be like, hey, remember that, you said this works. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that. Also helped me. I also tried to incorporate like my partner because like the kids don't mess with him as much. Not mess with him, but like he's got it down packed, like not down packed, but he definitely has more success sometimes than I do because I'll break the rules. I'll like toe the line. So having him write down what worked for him really helped work for me. And I saw a mom in another mom group recently saying that like she asked her husband, why is it working for him but not for her? And he wrote down all the things that he was doing. And she was like, oh, great. Thank you. Now I can follow this. So,
Love that.
like it was that simple. They did very simple versions model, but like, I don't know. I think just building upon it helped. And again, asking all the teachers' input made them feel they were helping. And that was taking pressure off of me to fill in a lot of this.
Mhm.
Because I am also biased, right? I'm his mother. And to your point, if you either love your kid, you think your kid is like out to get you, whatever. When I first did this, I probably had it more of him out to get me. But now I think I have it more of like, oh, like in a positive light. And so if I see my kid positively, teachers will see him positively. And it's like, then he can see himself positively, versus if I see him negatively, then the teachers, are going to feed off of me and then he'll see himself negatively. So,
Amazing.
yeah. So I think
Okay. So
that.
good. I love that. Yeah. Okay. Let's last couple of sections here.
Sorry, it's so long. To your point, you can't always make it shorter. Again, my
Well,
EDD
this
makes
is a
things really long.
document that's 3 years in the making. Everyone else will start with them. And by the way, for those listening, part of this document that we're going to share with you has the template for you. And you're going to get a copy of this so that Brooke has changed her son's name in the document just so you can have a sample. And if you want to share your sample afterwards, we can add your sample to this. You can change your child's name to inspire other parents, and we could get a list of samples that people can look at to get ideas.
Yeah,
Be really
that'd
helpful.
be amazing.
Yeah.
Because so much I learned from other people that I didn't even think of how to do. Um, yeah, and then just from a timing standpoint, we have 10 minutes. I personality, like, just again back to kind of as like the beginning, but just like he's gonna challenge you. Just like make sure people know, like they can't he'll see through your BS. Like if you're like, the tooth fairy's coming today, my son will be like, no, he's not. That's literally physically. So just again, know your kid's first, give them his personality ahead of time. I think is helpful. Conditions that he thrives upon, very similar. I put, and Rachel, this is actually something we did work on together.
Okay.
His long-term vision, like how I see my son in this world. Like this was probably very negative in the beginning, but slowly over time, it's like realized he was created with his brain, his physicality, his all his pieces of him for a unique purpose. And if, the teachers and I can all figure out how to tap into that appropriately, the fact that he is a kindergartner that can do fifth grade math, like, could he cure cancer? I don't know. But, let's not try and waste that away by just constantly, he's in trouble again. He's moving in the classroom. He's kicking a kid. Like, would that really matter if he can, like, help lots of other people? So I think I wanted to make sure they have that long term vision. Maybe I should even bring it to the top now that we're like kind of going through it. I have a mantra for my son, that like that he's smart and he's handsome, he's creative. Like I did this when he was a baby. I don't know, it might be silly, but like,
Just in case anybody is listening to this as an audio, driving, exercising, whatever, will you read the long-term vision?
okay. You think someone's gonna listen to 15 minutes? All right,
I
we'll
don't
see.
know, but I just sometimes
If they
that's what I
do, I will personally like send them some present. So my long-term vision for Jace is he sees the world in a whole new way. From the moment he was born, we knew he was smart and was meant to change the world with his incredible brain. If we all can support him in the classroom, then he'll be able to change all of our lives. I'm gonna cry. Every time I read that, I cry.
and read the
Um,
mantra. Read the mantra.
okay. And then when he was a baby, I would just really quick, I would rock him, trying to get him to sleep. And I would just say, I had this silly song that like Jesus is smart, or I would say Jesus is so handsome and he's smart. He's really creative and will change the world with his heart. And then I'd put him down to sleep. I just always did this when he was a baby. Um, so sometimes I'll just say that to him even now at nighttime, just to remind him, even though like I'm leaving, to put him to bed, like it's not because I don't love him. He has to be alone and like just remember how great he is. Um, yeah.
And then this
And
last piece, if I could speak to,
yeah,
which I love that you have here, which is says, if he could do better, he absolutely would. He wants to do well, but is still learning communication skills and impulse control. And it's just such a good reminder. We take that sort of the way that's phrased from Ross Greene's explosive child work. But, the idea is that if we always assume that our children want to do well and they do well when they can. It's a good reminder that, like, nobody wants to struggle and suffer in the way that a lot of our kids do. And if we remember that and keep that in our hearts, then it can help us have a lot more patience and compassion for them and remember that actually they just don't know how to get that need met in a better way. And our job is to teach them, not to punish them for it.
absolutely. And I think for this note, the reason I actually put this here, for me, I can't speak to others, is like I think sometimes old school parenting methods, that your parents, your aunts, your uncles, where some of us are trying to change patterns, right? And so just like they don't like some people don't even realize that like they're not being bad to be bad. They're not spoiled rotten, right? A lot of people will say, or oh, he's like the class clown, right? Like he doesn't want to be laughed at. He doesn't want to be like sent out to the hall. Like he doesn't like he's not trying to do those things. He just doesn't understand. Um, so I just think that was like really important for me to explain to others as a reminder. And then what this is my few favorite parts of this document, Rachel, is
Mm.
I put lots of like resources and videos for the teachers to understand more about his diagnosis and like I add to this constantly about like who he is, like what is autism or what is pathological demand, what is Charcot-Marie tooth, like a mom talking about it in a positive way. So I just put links so that when the teacher's looking at this, she can look at it. Um, and then I put his because I do have an IEP, I do have doctor's evaluations. I put it all in this document too, or links to it, that they can go and access it in my Google Drive so that it's not like, where's this document? Where's that document? Like I have everything in one place, so that teachers can access it and see what like the therapist again was working on, like I was saying, like what. So I put that all there, so everyone again is on the same page. And then I just put like some goals that I am working on with him, for my like I want him to be able to ride a bike. We haven't gotten there yet. I should probably get back onto that. Doing buttons, impulse, like waiting turns, like not crying, like with everything. It's okay to cry, but knowing the appropriate times when's not an appropriate time. Working on his handwriting because he's just so smart. He's just like going through the motions, trying new foods. But like, so I just put some of the things that like I have for him. And again, the IEP, doctor's evaluations, I put all the therapist links in here. And that's really it. So it's what, however many, 5 pages, but this has been over, like you said, 3 years of
Yeah.
building upon it.
And if you wanted to, you could put this in a one pager. You could filter it out to the most important things that you want a teacher or a camp counselor to know about. You could make this into a one pager. In fact, you told me that the special ed person at your son's school did convert this into a document that was more like teacher ease, had like, what was it, the five,
Five,
three, five?
555. It's
Yeah.
more like teacher language she made it into, and more educator language, and more special ed language. And yeah, so I think like it was great to even have this as a starting point, I think, to give to her, to then transform it into a way that she felt her staff would understand it, based off of the ways they work. Um, so yeah, I mean, I am a less is more or more is better person, because you might miss something. Again, back to my ADD, my scarcity mindset, whatever you want to call it. So I'm always putting more and more and more. Never enough, right? Is the bad thoughts that I have in my head. Or I'm going to miss something. But you can definitely, have comb it down if that's the type of person you're, where you're more direct. You're able to not nail it right there and then, and make it sure. Like I think I mentioned earlier, one of my best friends took this and makes it more like a resume. So it's like small picture of her son. She talks about his dyslexia. She talks about what works, what doesn't work. You know, she kind of took it and made it, like, she calls it his resume that she gives to all, like.
Let's get her copy as a sample on our little document we can share.
I'll ask her.
All
I'll
right.
ask her if she wants to do it. But yeah, like I think it's just, again, just wanted to share this with others in any way possible, to help our kids, help the teachers, help ourselves, help our partners, help our families. So
Well,
thanks for
thank
anyone
you
who
so
listened.
much. Yeah, thank you, Brooke, for making this available. I mean, it's so brave of you to share this with people, share your story, to benefit others. It says a lot about you. So I really acknowledge you and appreciate you for, so on behalf of the moms that are impacted on by this, but also on behalf of your kids. I mean, you've come so far since you and I first met. And we have to wrap up, but I just want to let everyone know who might be listening to this that if you're interested in getting support around creating a document like this, a body double for it, someone who can read your draft and give you feedback on it, definitely reach out to me. I coach moms privately and dads privately. I have a program called the Boy Mom Academy that people can jump into, where you can get individualized and group support from me, and asynchronous support. We have all the things. We're here to support you. So don't hesitate to
Definitely.
reach out, schedule a free consultation with me. Brooke, I guess we'll drop the link in the recording, for
Yeah.
whatever, the link to the document, the link to the free consultation, anything that you might
Yeah.
want to share with people about Sprinkles parents,
Yeah.
uh, and how to get in touch with you as well. And thank you so
Okay.
much. All right, take care,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thanks.